Pokemon Trainer Red. Could he actually become champion in the Kanto region? To find out, I decided to play through the Let's Go games as Red, but which Red? There's the original Red we met on Mount Silver, the Alola region Red who works as a boss at the Battle Tree, and of course the me Red that beat the original games using my own personal team. The right answer is D, none of the above, because Pokemon Trainer Red actually shows up in the Let's Go games, but he's no longer a main character, he's now a secret boss that you can only battle after you've claimed the title of champion and bested at least 6 master trainers in the region. Playing the game as this Red makes the most sense, because it guarantees that I can use the same Pokemon and movesets as the actual trainer for this run. Also, I'll be playing through the Pikachu version of these games, not because it gives me a Pikachu as my starter, I could just catch one of those in the Viridian Forest, but because I wanted to match the character's team as close as possible, and unlike the Red we've seen in other games, the Let's Go Red only keeps the #1 best starter on his team, replacing the Blastoise with a Machamp and the Charizard with one of the 4 legendary Pokemon in Kanto. Arcanine, which happens to be exclusive to the Pikachu version of the games. Before the run could even start, I was greeted by the Lavender Town Pikachu that pops out of my TV and then drags me into a weird sequence where Professor Oak tells me what a Pokemon is. And then he asks me, Red, the silent protagonist, a question. What is his name? Since I couldn't remember and Red doesn't say a word, there's only one possible name I could give this guy. Gamers, meet our friend, neighbor, and rival for this run. Also meet Pikachu, our starter, and HM's helpful Pokemon buddy. We also get asked to do some free labor for Oak in exchange for our starter Pokemon. Nothing too major, just delivering a package from the nearby town and you know, catching every single Pokemon in the region. But it's not all bad since he does give us some raspberries to make catching wild Pokemon a little bit easier. And with that, we can finally set off and explore the world. Forget your Pokédex, Oak. Our first destination is the Viridian Forest, where we can catch a real starter Pokemon, Bulbasaur. The only problem is that these Pokemon are considered special spawns, which means the odds of them showing up are very low. How low? I don't know. I tried to find some information on how this mechanic is supposed to work, and the best source seemed to be Cerebi, which told me that the base odds of rare spawns are quite low. But if I build up a catch combo of 11 or more, this Pokemon will become a very frequent spawn. The way catch combos work is just as you'd expect. You go and catch the same Pokemon over and over, and the combo will keep going up unless you catch a different Pokemon or the Pokemon flees. So instead of searching for hours, I just decided to go catch a bunch of Caterpie and build up my catch combo. And then I took a casual stroll through the forest until finding a Bulbasaur. After that, I made my way out of the woods and into Pewter City, where I could finally start the challenge by taking on the first gym. One thing I had forgotten about is that these games added an extra entry condition before you can even go inside the gym, and the first one requires you to present a grass or water type Pokemon. It's not that big a deal because I had a Bulbasaur from the forest, but it is a bit weird that they also give you the option for a water type, which are not available until later in the game. Anyways, the first gym leader is Brock, the bro who uses rock type Pokemon. The bad news for Brock is that the developers decided to make these games extra easy for the player, and I'm not even talking about the grass type requirement, which is already a huge handicap for the rock type gym leader. They also made it so that both Pikachu and Eevee can learn the move Double Kick at level 10. It is a fighting type move that happens to be super effective against rock type Pokemon. In other words, I could get an easy win here without even having to use Bulbasaur. Man, no wonder people thought these games were extremely easy. It starts off super simple. This became even more apparent once I reached Mount Moon, which is supposed to serve as the first major maze the player is supposed to explore. Except this time around, they put in Jesse James and Meowth from the anime all throughout the cave as living signposts that guide you in the right direction. Might as well slap some yellow paint while at it. And just when I thought things were going too smoothly, I ran into this guy, a generic Team Rocket grunt with one single Pokemon. An easy battle, I thought, except my Pikachu was already half dead from fighting a random kid with his Sandslash, and his Drowsy managed to land a Confusion. Not a problem, I thought, I can just use my once per battle potion and then sweep, except my Pikachu kept hitting itself in Confusion, and that Drowsy would deal major damage, knocking out my lead. Out next was Bulbasaur, who could use Vine Whip to deal some minor damage, but Bulbasaur is also part poison type, which happens to be very weak to Drowsy's psychic type moves. Thankfully, the AI decided to try and use Hypnosis on me instead of attack, and since it's got an abysmally low accuracy, the move missed and gave me an opening to set up some Leech Seeds and deal more damage with Vine Whip. I did manage to win this battle, but had I not gotten extremely lucky, I would have lost here to a random grunt. Huh. The rest of the cave was pretty uneventful. This nerd shared his fossils with me, and the route leading to Cerulean City was completely devoid of trainers, which may have been nice to have, considering I can't enter the next gym unless I have at least one Pokemon at level 15 or higher. So I guess I have to go train in the only place I can. The Nugget Bridge. Funny enough, this bridge is actually a great foreshadow to the Pokemon League, where you have to face off against a series of strong trainers and a powerful final boss. Except this guy is no champion, he's just an undercover recruiter for Team Rocket. My Pokemon had leveled up enough after beating him up, so I went back to the gym and challenged Misty. I managed to quickly take down her Psyduck using Pikachu's electric type moves, and also paralyzed her Starmie using Thunder Wave moments before she knocked out my lead with a powerful Scald. Then I sent out Bulbasaur, who set up some Leech Seeds for between turn healing, which was a good call since her Starmie knew a psychic type move. Lucky for me, the move she used was not Confusion but Psywave, a move that scales off of its user's level and has an element of RNG, which means I could tank through the hits if they rolled low enough and snag another victory. By the time I finished this gym battle, the police were done investigating a break-in by Team Rocket, which meant I could use my Ace Attorney logic to locate the criminal and retrieve the stolen TM for Dig. I tried to be a good Samaritan and return the item to its owner, but he told me to keep it. But more important than a new move is finally getting a new Pokemon, Growlithe. The only downside was that our next destination is the SSN, a boat full of water-type trainers, which means the Fire Doggo won't be of much use there. Thankfully, Pikachu could hard carry here and help me defeat every trainer on the boat, which is not something you have to do to get the technique for Cut, it's just something I did since I'm also working on a trainer census for the Kanto region and cannot revisit the boat once it leaves port. As it turns out, the third gym does not have ridiculous requirements to enter. All you have to do is chop down the tree out front. It's also the first gym to have an actual gym puzzle. 2 switches are hidden somewhere in those trash cans, and you have to press them both one after the other to open up the path towards the leader. Defeating the gym trainers will give you some extra clues on where to find those switches, and that was fairly easy since they all run electric type Pokemon, which also happened to be weak to the ground type move Dig. Then it was time to battle Lieutenant Surge. The funny thing about electric types is that they don't do much damage to each other, so while Surge set up light screens and thunderbolts, we could easily kick around his Voltorb until it faints. Magnemite is part steel type, which also gives it a weakness to fighting type moves, making it another easy knockout for our Pikachu. But that Raichu? That was gonna be a problem. I thought I could easily counter with Growlithe and its Dig, but Surge's Ace managed to one-shot our Doggo, leaving me with just Ivysaur. Thankfully, Grass resists lightning, tell that to the trees, so we could bulk through a couple of attacks and do our usual setup with Leech Seed. The Raichu did manage to paralyze us, however we got lucky and managed to attack every single turn, getting yet another victory thanks to good RNG. After winning the gym badge, we ran into Misty, who wanted to show us Diglett Cave and told us to meet lots of Pokemon there. But that felt like some sort of joke since the only Pokemon that do spawn inside these caves are Diglett and Dugtrio, and Zubat and Chansey? Wow, they really upped the biodiversity in this remake. But we weren't here to catch more Pokemon, we were here to learn how to flash from this assistant, although they changed its name to Light Up for PR reasons. This is also the part of the game where you end up having to loop back to find a path forward. That's because both entrances to Saffron City are closed down because the guards are thirstier than Brock, and the path east of Vermilion is blocked off by a giant sleeping Snorlax, meaning that the only way forward is to go back towards Cerulean Town and use the chop down technique on that one random tree to open up a whole new path. As it turns out, going through these more secluded routes isn't always the best of ideas, since it is the perfect place for gangs like Team Rocket to hang out, but that was a good thing for them since they could jump me for foiling their plans of stealing a TM from a guy who didn't want it, and then getting some fossils before they did. I don't know, the other guy had a fossil, they could have taken his, what did I do here? Anyway, Lorelei from the Elite Four happened to be in the area and came to the rescue, but she still made us fight one of the Rocket Grunts. Oh hey, it's the Raticate guy guy who stole the TM for Dig. They don't give him a name, so I'm not even sure if it is the same guy, but I'm gonna assume it's the same guy because it's more fun that way. Having cleared out the area, Lorelei went back to whatever she was doing, buying plushes or something, and we could get into the dark cave. But before that, there was a special trainer I had to fight. You see, in this remake, every route in Kanto received an additional coach trainer who is a bit stronger than the regular trainers in the area and will give you a useful TM or items for defeating them. And this lady hanging out by the entrance of the dark cave happened to be the one that gives you the TM for Brick Break, a move that Red's Pikachu is supposed to know. Unfortunately, I did not realize this is the trainer I was supposed to fight until much later in the run. Because when I was going through the dark cave at the time, I was too scared of being overleveled for the next gym and just walked by the majority of optional battles, including this one. That's alright though, since the cave is where we could add another Pokemon to our team. A Pokemon that knows all the fighting type moves we'd need, Machop. With a fourth member in tow, we made our way down to Lavender Town, where we witnessed Jesse and James kidnap a Cubone. Sounds like a job for the police. But this random kid made it sound like, you should go do something about it, so off to Celadon we go. Since I was still avoiding any trainer I could, I decided to take a shortcut through the grass, which was surprisingly the right choice since there was a random Firestone hanging out in the middle of the patch. It is an item I could use to evolve my Growlithe into an Arcanine, but I could not use it yet since I needed the doggo to reach level 28 and learn Crunch before evolving. That's because this game has a ton of pre-evolution exclusive moves, and Crunch happens to be one of them. If I evolve it now, I'll never learn Crunch. Once we got to Celadon, we ran straight towards the game corner to look for Team Rocket's base. And who was there guarding it? Our TM thieving friend with his Eradicate. After double kicking him out of the way with our Pikachu, we could push the button behind the poster and break into their base. Our infiltration mission was going well, except we needed to find a key for the elevator that would lead us to the boss's room, and the grunt that was guarding it actually had some brain cells. I say some because instead of just taking the key and making a run for it, he took the key and then threw it into the vents. That's the vents, right? Where's an Among Us when you need one? Either way, with the help of our starter Pikachu, we could take the key back and then take the elevator, and then take on Jesse and James again. But they were a lot tougher this time since both of their Pokemon had evolved, and I forgot to put Ivysaur at the back of the party. We focused our attacks on Weezing since that thing is a lot bulkier, but maybe Arbok was the better option since it could deal a lot of damage. They managed to take down both Pikachu and Ivysaur in just a few turns, and while Machamp was getting one-shot, Growlithe used a flamethrower to finally finish off the Weezing, reaching level 28 and learning how to crunch. Then it was time to take on the powerful Snake, but I got lucky that the AI decided to use Glare instead of attack the next turn, giving me the chance to attack, which was all I needed to burn the Snake away. After going back to the Pokemon Center for a quick heal, I came back to challenge the Team Rocket boss, as there were two of them. First up was Archer, who suggested invading Silph Co to steal their technology, and he also has a Weezing. I just battled this thing like 2 minutes ago. The only thing different is that we got lucky with the Paralysis, which allowed Pikachu to get one last attack in and finish off the nasty ball of poison gas. This was great news for us since our Thunderbolt could also deal major damage to Archer's second Pokemon, Golbat, before getting knocked out, meaning we could easily finish things off with Growlithe's Flamethrower. Since Machop was going to get one shot anyways, I decided to send out Ivysaur next, which could barely survive one Air Slash and got to finish off the bat with a takedown. After going back to the Pokemon Center for another quick heal, I came back to battle the second boss, Giovanni. He's the actual boss. His lead Pokemon Persian used Fake Out to deal some decent damage and then went on the offensive with Slash. Meanwhile, we were hitting back with Double Kick, but we definitely weren't dealing enough damage. Unfortunately, this is also the point in the game where the affection mechanics were starting to kick in, allowing Pikachu to do ridiculous things like dodge attacks and survive with 1 HP. This monster not only knocked out the Persian, but tanked a second attack from Rhyhorn and basically cut its health in half before finally fainting. From there, it was an easy win, although in hindsight, I should have just reset the game and tried to battle again without the affection stuff. And unlike the other Pokemon games where I could use bitter herbs to reduce my Pokemon's affection, those don't exist in the Let's Go games. Meaning the only way to lower Pikachu's affection was to make it faint a bunch of times during battle, which wouldn't be an issue if I could fight wild Pokemon, but that's not an option in this game either. And I know what you're thinking, why not just go through a bunch of trainer battles? Well, that's because every time I lose, I also lose some money, and I cannot afford to empty out my wallet just yet for 3 main reasons. The first is that I'll need a lot of cash to buy a bunch of TMs from the Celadon Mall. Moves like Iron Tail, Waterfall, and Hyper Beam. I even had to sell off most of my possessions just to afford those 3. But I'd need even more money for later, like the Elite 4 later. Since there is no healing between each member of the Elite 4, I need to have the items to do the healing myself, and that means I have to afford enough revives and potions to restore my team's health between battles. And reason number 3, it just sucks to go throw battles, and even if I do, it only lowers the friendship affection stat by 1 point. So I'd have to throw a lot of battles and a lot of money to make this mechanic go away. That's a long way of saying we're just gonna have to deal with the Pikachu staring back at us every other turn during battle saying, "Am I winning, Dad?" Anyways, now that Team Rocket's taken care of, we could finally go to the next gym and take on Erica. But first, I had to present a cute Pokemon? Not entirely sure what counts as cute here, and I wasn't in the mood to do a science, so I just showed him my Pikachu and waltzed through the gym with the help of my cute flaming puppy. I guess getting there took a while since Erica was taking a nap by the time we reached her for our battle. She started off with a Tangela that knew a draining move to recover its health and sleep powder to make our Pikachu take a nap too. My Pikachu was just a warm-up for the main event, Arcanine, who could easily bake her grass types with its heat wave. Okay, except for the Vileplume, that must be some sort of tropical plant. It's resistant to fire, just like the ones in California. It also tried to be a little tricky with those draining moves, however, no tricks can take down a legendary Pokemon. One thing I forgot to mention is that we get a TM after defeating the gym leaders, and Erica is the first one that gives us a TM that we'd actually need for our team, Mega Drain. Having finished all of our work in Celadon, we could finally head back to Lavender Town and help that kidnapped Cubone find its mom. Although, it looks like its mom might already be a ghost. Arrival decides to take care of this sad little Cubone while we go up the tower to look for a Mr. Fuji? I kinda lost the plot at this point, but at least Machamp and Ivysaur got to evolve, so that's the spirit. At the top of the tower, we ran into Jesse and James yet again, although the battle is much easier now that we have an Arcanine on the team. Once they left, Fuji told us that he was trying to calm down the spirit of Marowak this whole time and takes us back to his house to give us his Poke Flute. Finally, a useful item. With this item, we could play a soothing melody, or rather, an alarm clock noise to wake up the Snorlax that's been blocking our way. And we also get to have our one and only Pokemon battle with a wild Pokemon that's not a legendary. Instead of going straight for the throw a ball at it method, we first had to defeat it in battle, which was not at all a problem for Armachoke, and just like that, we had ourselves another member for the team. This is also around the point where I realized I had completely missed that trainer battle for Brick Break, so I went back up to the entrance of the Dark Cave for a quick battle, although it was not as challenging now that I was overleveled. Having caught up with everything, I finally got to visit Saffron City, only to find out that it's been completely taken over by Team Rocket. Sounds like a job for the police. Anyways, we decided to go check up on the Silph Co building since that's what the devious team was really targeting, but before getting to go in and tackle the problem, we got stopped by none other than Blue, who is technically the current champion of Kanto. He agrees to let us drive out Team Rocket from the Silph Co building, but only if we can beat him in a battle. And he only has 2 Pokemon, so this should be easy, right? Well, for starters, he set up a light screen to lower special attack damage, so I'm stuck using Iron Tail. Meanwhile, Executor hits hard with its Power Whip. Too hard, in fact. But it's not a problem since we can just send out Arcanine and use Heat Wave to... oh right, he blocks special attacks. Should've gone for Crunch instead. But it's alright, just one more Pokemon. How hard can it be? Well, that Charizard is faster than our fire type, so we send out Snorlax next. This thing has special bulk for days, and we can use moves like Lick to paralyze the Charizard, then spam Headbutt for extra damage. But sadly, not enough damage. Machoke is out next, only to get instantly one-shot, leaving us with just the #1 choice of starter, who bulks through one hit thanks to affection. We seeded the Charizard and then spammed Mega Drain in hopes that this thing gets paralyzed for long enough, but we take too many turns and get burned as soon as it can make a move, leading to my first major loss. Man. Red was supposed to be this powerful trainer that took on the Elite Four and snagged the title of champion from Blue, yet here I am, losing a battle against just 2 of his 6 Pokemon. To be fair, his Charizard was definitely a bit overleveled, but I still couldn't come out on top, and I tried this battle a couple times. If this were a completely linear Pokemon game, I'd actually be stuck at this point and have to end the run. However, it turns out that the Kanto region has several splitting paths at this point in the game. The main route is to go straight to Saffron and take on Team Rocket, but now that we have the Pokeflute and can make those Snorlax get out of the way, there is another path we can take. Well, technically 2 paths, but they all lead to the same destination, Fuchsia City, home to the lively Safari Zone, where rare Pokemon are free to roam. Surf Bros can teach me how to access even more of this world, and there's also the Safari Zone Warden, who is all too happy that we found his golden teeth. Not only does he teach us how to use strength, but I imagine he helps Red evolve his Machoke with a quick friendly trade. After all, both of these characters can't quite communicate with others for one reason or another, and I see no one else that'd be willing to help Red out with this specific evolution method. Maybe Professor Oak or Blue, but not at this point in the story. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here, because the real reason I came to Fuchsia is to take on the gym. Except, I need to have at least 50 entries in my Pokedex to enter. I feel like Koga is in cahoots with Professor Oak, because there's also a lab assistant nearby that's hoping we have at least 50 entries in our Pokedex as well. Coincidence? I think not. Anyways, the battle with Koga was long. He leads with a wheezing just like the many Team Rocket grunts we've battled so far, but that also means I just know to spam Thunderbolt to take it down. But then I realized that this guy's playing a different game, a toxic stalling game. Thankfully, I got a bunch of the affection effects to proc, curing Pikachu of the poison and then landing 2 crit hits back to back, allowing me to easily get a knockout. But Koga wasn't done yet, as his next Pokemon, Muk, did the exact same thing. That's his whole strategy, isn't it? I tried to get a few extra hits in here and there, but our Thunderbolts just weren't doing enough damage to knock this thing out, and his Muk was a bit more proactive, using moves like Sludge Bomb to deal major damage along the way. I followed up with Machamp, who knew how to use Dig, but apparently the move Toxic can hit a Pokemon even if it's underground. He then protected the next turn, wasting my whole setup, and since I didn't want to fool around, I decided to finally try out that Hyper Beam attack, which is not something I would put on a Machamp, and seeing how little damage it did, I doubt I'll ever use this thing again. Why does Red have this? My best counter to Koga's toxic stalling strategy was to use Snorlax, and I had it headbutt the Muk to finish it off. Koga's Golbat instantly went on the offensive with Fly, but that meant I too could use stall strategies and protect the next turn to block the attack. The turn after that I used Lick to paralyze the agile Bat, who was busy protecting and using Fly to dodge my moves. Eventually, Koga decided to actually use his strategy and set up a Toxic, which gave me the opening to finally headbutt this thing. Since my HP was starting to run low and I didn't want to take any chances, I had Snorlax use Rest, which recovers all of our health and removes any status effects, but it does put us to sleep, leaving us wide open for the next couple of turns. Once Snorlax woke up again, it was back to headbutting the Bat, who instantly poisoned us, but it had too few HP to do much else. This left Koga with his final Pokemon, Venomoth? I used Lick to try and paralyze it, but sadly the effect did not trigger this time and I took too much damage from its attack, meaning my Toxic Wall was out of the picture. Good thing I also have a legendary on my team, but dang does this moth hit hard. And it's surprisingly bulky too, tanking through a heat wave and finishing off my secret weapon with a Psychic. This was bad news for me because Venusaur is at a huge disadvantage here, but I had no other choice. So I sent it out, used Takedown, and happened to attack first. So I guess I was worried for nothing. Having defeated Koga, we got ourselves another gym badge, but more importantly, another useful TM that Red actually uses and can absolutely save this run, Toxic. This is a move that Red's Snorlax is supposed to know instead of Lick, and it's a move that makes all the difference. We went back to Saffron City for a rematch against Blue, which started out pretty similar, Pikachu getting knocked out by the Francisca Special, then Arcanine finishing off Blue's lead with some heat waves, and then it was time for the real problem, Charizard, who could easily sweep my team last time, but now we have Toxic, meaning our special bulk Snorlax could poison this dragon-like lizard, then use moves like Protect to stall for a few turns. It could also get in some extra damage with a headbutt and even take a nap. Meanwhile, Charizard's HP withered away to the poison. Finally, a win. Once inside of Silph Co, we took on several Team Rocket grunts, and by that I mean all of the grunts, because just like with the SSN, I could only fight them now, and while most of them used the same old Pokemon as before, a few had added some electric types to their team as well. Seeing that we're there to help save Silph Co, one of the office workers trapped inside of the building decided to gift us with a Lapras that he had hidden from Team Rocket as a thanks for coming to save them. And what a thanks it was, because this happens to be the last Pokemon needed to complete Red's team. Our rival decided to pitch in and help too by taking on Archer, so that was one less Team Rocket member for me to fight. But it did mean that I had to go take on the big boss instead. It's time for round 2, Giovanni! His lead used the same old silly trick of Fake Out for major damage followed by Slash, but since our Pikachu finally knows Brick Break, we can easily take down this cat. Since the rest of his Pokemon were ground types, I decided to give that Lapras a shot and used Waterfall to finish off the Rhyhorn and deal decent damage to the Nidoqueen. And since it wasn't doing so much damage to us, we could just spam moves like Ice Shard to finish it off, defeating Team Rocket once again and getting the Master Ball as a thanks from the Silph Co president. With the town restored to normal, we could finally go challenge the gym, or so I thought, because once again, I was stopped in my tracks by that pesky gatekeeper. This time I had to show them a Pokemon that was at least level 45, which had me a bit confused because Sabrina's strongest Pokemon is only level 44. Here I was trying to not be over leveled for this run, and the game is telling me that's the only way you even get to enter this gym. So I went back out into the wild to fight some more random trainers, then returned to challenge Sabrina. She leads with Mr. Mime, who set up a light screen to stop me from using special moves, but I'm a rebel and kept spamming Thunderbolt until it knocked out her Mime. This was a good idea since her next Pokemon was a Slowbro who happened to be extra weak to my electric type moves, allowing me to dent its HP enough to where even a Pokemon like Arcanine could finish it off. Sabrina followed up with Jinx, which got one shot by a Crunch, which left her with just Alakazam, and this thing does not mess around. The bad news for her is that Snorlax packs a lot of special bulk and uses Koga's sneaky strategy of toxic stalling its enemies, meaning we could take a punch, take a nap, and take another gym badge for the road. Speaking of which, the road ahead was a long and puzzling one. I knew I could just surf south from Pallet Town to get to the last gym, but I had grown so tired of all the big battles that I just wanted to take a more peaceful route, like the one going through the Seafoam Islands, where there's no trainers to bug me. Man, no wonder Red ended up going to Mount Silver. It feels kinda nice here. And we even ran into another Uno of Kanto's legendary Pokemon. It looks strong and all, but it just took a couple of Thunderbolts and Heat Waves to break its defenses and catch this cool bird. After making our way over to Cinnabar, we had yet another puzzle to solve, that being the Pokemon Mansion, which was more large than puzzling. Anyways, we took on some thieves and rogue scientists and made our way to the basement, where we found some strange experimental pods left over from some time ago, as well as the key to the gym. Why the heck did Blaine hide it all the way down here? But hey, at least there's no ridiculous gatekeeping requirement. Just like Surge's gym, the thing we had to do was find a way to get inside the gym. That's the requirement. The other cool thing about Blaine's gym is that it's basically a game show where he asks us quiz questions, and if we get them right, we get a Blaine doll. And if we get them wrong, we get to fight a trainer, and then get a Blaine doll. Now typically I have no problem answering these things correctly, but since I wanted to see all the dialogue from these gym trainers for my Senses video, I intentionally answered wrong to get to battle them. Except that there was no way to answer the final question wrong. All of these describe a Blaine pretty well. Following the Quizmaster theme, his lead Pokemon used Confusion to confuse my Pikachu and Flamethrower to turn up the heat, but my lead knew the correct answers and passed the first quiz with ease. Out next was Rapidash, who finished it off with a Flare Blitz, but also took a lot of damage from recoil. We followed up with Machamp, who dug his way out of the tricky situation, but got taken down by Blaine's own legendary fire Pokemon. We sent out Snorlax next for some chip damage, but unfortunately this giant pillow doesn't pack much physical bulk. I thought I'd fight fire with fire, but Blaine wasn't too happy about it, although that did not stop me from knocking out his dog, leaving him with just his ace. A Ninetales? Man, it's been so long that I forgot what most of these gym leaders used. The good news for us was that this fox couldn't do much damage, spamming moves like Quick Attack, while we crunched away at its health until knocking it out, getting us the final gym badge. Wait. This is the 7th gym badge, isn't it? I completely forgot about the one in Viridian City. And that's not the only thing I forgot about this town, because that's also where I was supposed to go to pick up the TM for Will-O-Wisp, which can be accessed by chopping down this tree to the east of town and talking to this guy who is having some nightmares. This whole time I could have been setting things on fire with Arcanine, and I completely missed it. But that's not the only new TM we got, because Blaine gave us Fire Blast, a move that he suggested we teach to a fire type Pokemon, which makes sense. So of course we're gonna use it on Machamp. Yep, Red's Machamp runs Hyper Beam and Fire Blast. I have no idea why, but this is the nature of the runs I do, so I'll just roll with it. Anyway, since the Viridian Gym was still locked up, we decided to go talk to Oak about it. But instead of more information, we got the Keystone as a gift from Blue, which lets us Mega Evolve any of the original 3 Kanto starters. We have one of those. Leaving the lab with no answers, a random girl in town decides to tell us a secret rumor that the Viridian City gym leader is back all of a sudden. Well, that's convenient. After taking on all of the trainers in this oddly familiar puzzle, I finally reached the last gym leader, who was none other than Giovanni. Time for round 3, my man. Since this is the ground type gym, he no longer uses the Persian, but instead leads with a Duck Trio, which does a number on our Pikachu. But those affection mechanics kicked in, allowing it to survive with 1 HP and then land a critical Iron Tail, knocking out his lead. Since I felt a bit bad about benefiting so much from this mechanic, I decided to throw by using Thunderbolt, which does nothing against ground type Pokemon. But even then, Pikachu was still holding on to dear life. Once it finally got knocked out, I followed up with Lapras from Silph Co, which could bulk through the earthquakes like a champ and deal major damage with its waterfall move. The same strategy worked on the Rhydon, but since we were taking so much damage along the way, I had to switch over to using Ice Shards to finish off the Nidoking, getting us a very easy victory. Having lost to a random child using cheats 3 times in a row, Giovanni finally decides to rage quit, disbanding Team Rocket and leaving the gym leaderless once more. The good news for our rival is that Blue decided to take over the gym as its new leader, so he too can have a shot at having all 8 gym badges and taking on the league. And while he was doing that, I decided to head back to Cerulean City for a one last TM. You see, our Lapras is supposed to know the move Mega Horn, which we could get from a coach trainer hanging out near the Cerulean Cave. But it seems that he's not even willing to battle us unless we're champion, so I guess we just don't get Mega Horn for this run. Once we did reach the Pokemon League, I could finally talk to the move reminder, who charged me 1 heart scale to have any one of my Pokemon relearn a single move they already knew. Man, I'm glad this mechanic is gone from future games. So I had Venusaur relearn Amnesia and Arcanine relearn Roar. I wasn't planning on ever using either of those moves, but I thought I'd add them in the spirit of the character-based run. Then I bought a ton of revives and went to take on the Elite Four. First up was Lorelei, who saved us from Team Rocket's sneak attack near the Dark Cave, but the bad news for her was that most of the Ice-type Pokemon in this region are also part Water-type, meaning we could just use Thunderbolt to take them down. The Pokemon that aren't weak to Water happen to be weak to Steel-type moves, and we have Iron Tail, which might not help against physical walls like Cloyster, but it is powerless against special attacks like Thunderbolt. We also managed to paralyze her signature Lapras, meaning the poor thing couldn't even attack us, and that left Lorelei with just her Slowbro. I agree, we're going through this fight way too fast, but I think that's just a skill issue on Lorelei's part. Up next was Bruno, the fighting type expert who leads with everyone's favorite fighting type Pokemon, Onix. Okay, maybe he just heard what happened with Lorelei and decided to be a bit more prepared, using Earthquake to take down our pesky Pikachu. But our Machamp also knows Earthquake, so we could just quickly return the favor. Sadly, we got outpunched by his Poliwrath, who kept spamming Superpower to take down my Pokemon. The only downside to spamming that move is that it lowers the user's physical attack and defense stats, meaning it couldn't hit hard enough to one-shot Snorlax. And its defenses were down enough to where we could knock it out with a Body Slam. Bruno followed up with his own Machamp, who used the very same move to finish off our Snorlax. But again, that made his Pokemon too weak to knock out our Arcanine, meaning we could safely spam Heat Wave and knock out yet another Pokemon. Out next was Hitmonlee, and we were running out of Pokemon. Lucky for me, Lapras could hit pretty hard with a Waterfall and deal some chip damage with Ice Shard, but it couldn't quite take down the fighter. So we had to send out Venusaur, Mega Evolve, and finish it off with a Mega Drain. Bruno's last Pokemon was even scarier because it had a super effective move, but our Mega Venusaur is just so bulky that it could take those punches like a champ and dish out enough damage to win. Having healed up our team, I made my way into the next room to fight Agatha, who happens to know quite a lot about Oak. But who is she? Is she his sister, his wife, or just a rival? We'll never know, but what we do know is that she uses a lot of poison types, just like Koga. We could take care of the Arbok by spamming Thunderbolt, but took way too much damage to do much against her first Gengar. That's right, first. She has 2 of them. However, since she does run a poison type team, it meant I could just send out my champ next and then have it spam Earthquake to take it down. Agatha followed up with her second Gengar, which happened to know Dazzling Gleam, a super effective fairy type move, but it didn't hit hard enough to knock us out, which meant her second ghost is gone as well. Call us an exorcist, cause these guys are out of the field. We sent out Lapras next to take on her Golbat, which was a good choice since this thing is weak to ice shards, and it couldn't deal much damage to us thanks to our thick shell. Oddly enough, her last Pokemon knew Thunderbolt, which was going to be a problem for Lapras, but not a problem for Arcanine, who just spammed Heat Wave to knock it out, just like the other 200 Weezings we battled so far. And with that, we just had one more trainer to face before getting to become champion. Everyone's favorite bird keeper, a Lance. Wait, that's not a bird, that's a seahorse. Which is a good thing for me because I can just one-shot it with a Thunderbolt. Now that's a bird, an ancient bird, but still a bird. Unfortunately, it knows Earthquake, so it can quickly take out our lead. But since it is also a rock-type Pokemon, I decided to send out Lapras next and use Waterfall to knock it out of the sky. Well, almost, but I could just finish it off with a Night Shard the next turn. Gyarados is yet another powerful Pokemon, and this one doesn't take much damage from her silly Ice Shards, so I had to think of another strategy, and fast. Since there was no clear good option, I thought I'd send out Machamp next, but he got flinched by Waterfall, and when I had him use Hyper Beam, the move let me down yet again. This thing has 150 base attack and it did barely any damage. Thankfully, Snorlax was bulky enough to take one hit, and since it didn't flinch, it could use Body Slam to finish off the Water Dragon. Lance followed up with Charizard, but the bad news for him is that I know how to handle it, thanks to our good buddy Blue. So we used Toxic to poison the dragon and then took a nap to recover our health and spammed Protect until waking up. And since Lance was dumb enough to also use Hyper Beam on us and lose an extra turn thanks to the move's side effects, his Fire Dragon got easily taken down with the poison. Now time for the only real dragon on his team. The bad news for us was that our Toxic attack finally missed, and just when I thought Snorlax was done for after taking an Outrage from Dragonite, the darn affection triggered again. The second time around our Toxic attack did land, and our Snorlax went down to the damage from burn, so it's almost as if the Toxic never missed in the first place. Arcanine bulked through an attack and did some chip damage with Crunch. Meanwhile, Dragonite got confused, but instead of punching itself, it missed its Hyper Beam. That gave us an opening to do even more damage, and with the help of Toxic, we managed to drain the dragon's HP and win ourselves the final battle. Except there was actually one more trainer left to face. Professor Oak? Or should I say Professor Joke? This guy likes his puns a bit too much. And I wish this next part was a joke because Oak basically tells me that Kanto used to function like Scarlet and Violet, where anyone who beat the Elite Four would be registered as champion, but thankfully they realized how dumb that sounds and decided to establish a champion role for only one person to hold. And if we want that role, we have to take it from the current champion by force. So to see if Red could become champion, I now had to fight our rival. We've technically battled him many times up until now, but I chose not to talk about those battles in order to not spoil how things would go in this one, especially since his team doesn't change all that much. For starters, he leads with a Pidgeot, which he also Mega Evolves, a nice callback to Red's real rival, and also a nice easy knockout because Pikachu can use Thunderbolt. Up next is Vileplume, which was quite the trouble in the Grass-type gym and quite the trouble for a dear pal Pikachu, but not really a problem for Arcanine. For some reason, it set up a Reflect to lower our physical moves, and then our rival did something I didn't know was possible in a game as easy as this. He swapped out his Pokemon. Our Heat Wave was useless against the Slowbro he sent out next, and thanks to that Reflect, our super effective Crunch attack wasn't gonna do much damage. I cannot believe I got outsmarted by this twerp. Anyways, the Reflect wore off, so I sent out Snorlax next and finished off the Slowbro with a Body Slam. Then he sent out the Vileplume again, which only had a few HP, and surprised me yet again by using a Max Potion to fully heal it. Someone called Giovanni. I wanna go commit a crime. For legal reasons, that is a joke. Anyways, we go for the offense opponents with Body Slam, but this pesky flower sets up a Reflect to lower our damage. It tries to set up a Solar Beam, but Snorlax knows Protect, so we can just negate its attack. Then it managed to poison us, but instead of resting, I kept going on the offensive since I was sick of dealing with this thing. Had I chosen to rest, I probably could have tanked a few more hits from his next Pokemon, but alas, I'll never know. Thankfully, Lapras can tank way more than a few hits and knock this thing out with a couple of Waterfalls and Ice Shard. Our rival follows up with his evolved version of his starter, Jolteon, who one-shots us with a Thunder, but we can easily take care of it with an Earthquake from a champ. That left him with just one last Pokemon, Rapidash. Never mind, I should not take this thing lightly. And it's even more of a problem because our last Pokemon is weak to fire. But we send it out anyways, Mega Evolve, and just barely tank a hit. And then we launch a Sludge Bomb, which somehow does enough damage to get the knockout. I was not expecting to win this, but I'll take it. And with that, we now know that Red could indeed become champion in the Kanto region. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and hold it! The Red that became champion in Kanto might have gotten to battle the same gym leaders, the same Team Rocket, and even the same Elite Four as the ones we did in this game. But this guy is not his actual rival. As we all know, Red's true rival is none other than Gary Motherflippin' Oak, more formally known as Blue. So to see if Red could actually become champion, I should go fight the right rival for that title. The good news is that this is entirely possible since you can rematch every gym leader in the region once per day after you become champion. And since Blue took over the Viridian City Gym, we can go there and battle him right now. The bad news is that his team is a whole 10 levels higher than all of the other gym leaders and the fake rival, so we're gonna have to do some training first. This works out in our favor since we also have one more trainer to fight and one more place to explore, the Cerulean Cave, guarded by the coach trainer holding the TM for Megahorn, which Red needs to use on his Lapras. The battle was very reminiscent of that with Giovanni, as this guy leads with a Rhydon and a Nidoking, and even though Pikachu could hack its way through the first Pokemon, it was gonna need some backup to take on the king. Thankfully, Lapras was pretty bulky and can hit the ground type Pokemon pretty hard, getting us another knockout. It could also deal major damage to the Rapidash, which knocked itself out with recoil after using a Flare Blitz, and the coach's next Pokemon was none other than Dugong, which I always forget exists. Anyways, I sent out a Pokemon I do remember and had it use Super Power, which was powerful enough to get a one-shot. We continued to spam this move on his final Pokemon, which wasn't strong enough to take us down, finally getting us the last TM needed to complete Red's team. But we still needed to level up, so we decided to go inside this cave and explore. Inside, we found another legendary Pokemon, Mewtwo, which we poison stalled with our bulky Snorlax and watched as it plowed down our team. However, that poison showed no mercy and managed to knock it out. I was thinking of using the Master Ball on this thing, but I thought I'd give an Ultra Ball a shot and managed to catch it on my second throw. Legends schmegends, we're here for something else entirely, the level grind. That's because there's plenty of high level Chansey that we can lure out using special items and chain together to make even more of them show up. We also ran into a mysterious girl who's looking for the Mewtwo we caught earlier. She tried to battle us but lost to our toxic stalling Snorlax, then tried to catch Red in several Pokeballs. Good thing she didn't use any Rizzberries, otherwise we might end the run right there. But her plan failed and she left us alone. By that point, we had leveled up enough to where we could go and battle Blue to see if the rumors were actually true, that Red could win against him and actually become champion. His lead Pokemon Tauros is extremely bulky and can easily knock out our Pikachu, but we can counter this bull with our 4-armed Macho Man and his superpower move. Of course, Blue would always follow up with Alakazam, who sets up a Reflect to lower our physical damage, then use Psychic to one-shot our champ. Even if we do survive thanks to Affection, we can't do much damage here. Out next is Lapras, who can hit super hard with that Megahorn attack, and finish off the Psychic Spoon with an Ice Shard. Blue follows up with Executor, who has a 4x weakness to Megahorn, not sure why he sends this out next. What isn't easy is the next Pokemon, Aerodactyl. This thing loves to spam Rock Slide, which has an absurdly high flinch rate, making both Lapras and Arcanine completely useless. Our only option was to send out Snorlax and poison stall this thing back to extinction, but we run into the same problem with the Gyarados. Sure, we can poison it and stall for a few turns, but it's fast and it hits too hard for Snorlax to survive, leaving us with just Venusaur. Since this thing is poisoned and Blue's last Pokemon is a special attacker, I thought the best approach was to Mega Evolve and then spam Amnesia to max out her special defense. Meanwhile, Blue's Gyarados would slowly succumb to the poison and faint. This worked out okay enough, although it definitely managed to dent our HP a lot thanks to its Outrage attack. Now it was Blue's turn to Mega Evolve, and our turn to use our one-time heal, hoping that the buffs will be enough to tank several super effective hits. Then we switched to the offensive with Sludge Bomb, but it wasn't doing much damage, and even with our maxed out bulk, we could only take 2, maybe 3 super effective hits, meaning that Red would actually lose. Kind of. I tried this battle a few more times with different strategies, and there were ways he could win. The cheater way is simply to rely on Pikachu tanking through the Tauros with affection hacks, which means we get 2 extra knockouts against Gyarados and Aerodactyl early on. Then we can have Lapras take care of the Alakazam and Exeggutor, and Snorlax can just Toxic Stall the Charizard. But this method feels a bit cheap as it's over-reliant on Pika hacks. So instead I wanted to try another method, which was to have Arcanine use Roar and try to drag the Charizard out early. However, that move always hits last, so we're gonna take a lot of damage, and there's no guarantee we'd get the right Pokemon. So the only other thing I could try is to change up the order of my team, sending out Venusaur next instead of saving it for last. This strategy worked out great since we could bulk through and drain the Aerodactyl's health, and since we knew that the Amnesia spam would be pointless, we could also just focus on draining through the Dragon's HP too. And once the Charizard does blast us away with its fire, we could just poison it with Snorlax and stall out a few turns to win. Now, would the real Red do something like this? I'm not too sure, but I feel like these trainers are programmed to save their Kanto starter for last, so whether Red could actually defeat Blue and become champion in Kanto is very much up in the air. I personally would actually say no, as the base strategy Red loses the battle for sure. No matter how bulky the Venusaur gets, it simply could not knock out the Charizard. But what about you? Do you think Red could become champion in Kanto, or was it just a stroke of luck and plot armor writing at this point? Let me know in the comments down below. Either way, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I think I'm gonna go up to Mount Silver and just chill for a bit. Bye.